Welcome to the dungeon. Dum dum dum. Hello, Cherise.
Hi, Sheedia. It's nice to be back down here. It's cooler than last time. I think we
Yeah, I
made
agree.
a way. I think we made our way out of hell. The last time, or maybe two episodes ago, we were talking about Christianity, and I know we ruffled a lot of feathers in that one.
Yes,
Then we spoke
yes.
a little bit about colonialism,
And
and
racism.
and racism. So I'm sure we ruffled some feathers. But today seems like it could be a more chill episode. I don't know. Is that possible with us?
I don't know. You started it rough last time with your reading on secrets and all that stuff. So you started deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're ready for this episode where we want to talk about the price and prize of authenticity.
Price and
We
Prize.
touched on,
P R
yeah, we
I
touched
C
on
E and P
authenticity.
R I Z E.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. We touched on authenticity briefly in the first episode where I introduced you because you are all about authenticity, right? Like that's part of your brand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it is for me too. So let's talk about it. What to you is authenticity?
So, what I think authenticity is when we're able to align our way of being, meaning our actions, our words, or even our thoughts, with a more essential existence. Now, that might be tricky to really explain, and I don't know how to put words to that. But my assumption, based on my experience and what I've heard from others, is that each of us has a particular coding, tendency, desire as a soul that has come onto this planet, onto Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that coding and way of existing will exist. Like we just exist. But there's a particular flavor that each of us is meant to carry. And I think authenticity is when you are tapped into what your flavor is. Now, here's a tricky thing your flavor will change based on environments. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're being inauthentic. Authenticity is not just a fixed way of being, it's also, I think, a responsive way of being, meaning even in situations that I may not have encountered before, I allow my flavor to tell me where to go or how to manage things. And this is an example I'll give. There's certain ways that I express myself when I'm talking to you in English that I won't express myself if I'm talking in Spanish. And I've questioned this thing. What is the more authentic way of being, right? And I recognize that there's some parts of authenticity that's indescribable. It's, I think, also just allowing oneself to be in the moment and not always be prescribing how they should be is also a part of it.
I have another example for that
Mm-hmm.
that I realized this morning. I walk in the morning and I was listening to some American pop music or something. And I remember thinking, I need to switch more to listen to papiamento music from Curacao. And then I thought about that even more. And I realized that whenever I'm in a particular country, I love listening to music from other countries different than the country that I'm in. So for example, whenever I'm away from Curacao, I listen to a whole lot of papiamento music. And then I realized that that's my way of connecting with the world. Right, like right now I'm in a very much I listen to Caribbean music a lot, which then, ties into the work that I do on racial awareness and it ties in with this podcast. But that's kind of like the essence that I'm tapping into and enjoying. And so, if I'm being authentic to myself and how I function, I always listen to the music different than the country that I'm in.
Hmm.
And also, and another part of that is the country that you're in, you get its music naturally.
Regardless.
Yeah. So I don't
Regardless.
focus on that. I get it automatically. And so I focus on what I don't get in order to kind of fulfill those voids.
And then also remember, if we're thinking about authenticity as the way your soul shows up, our souls don't know country or nationality per se. It just knows experience and it knows what it wants to experience, but it's boundless. And I think about, even in Jamaica, people who have an alternative taste in music, like people who listen to rock or punk or goth music, or people who do cosplay in Jamaica are seen as the weirdest weirdos in the whole place. And it's like, you're no real Jamaican because you're interested in anime culture and all of that kind of stuff. Personally, I'm not. I don't see the appeal. But I do see how, just based on what you're saying, those people are exploring their authenticity outside of what a national definition tells them they should be. And so I think that's also another aspect of authenticity, that it's not just the automatic programmed way of being. Now, if the automatic program way of being works for you, and we're all working by programming, it's inescapable, to be honest. But still, being able to explore beyond just what you think you should be. You mentioned my brand. So I do have a podcast myself called Adventure in Authenticity. And the reason why it's titled Adventure in Authenticity is this idea that becoming or coming into more of your authentic self is a journey. It's a journey of unlearning, relearning, sorting, sifting, keeping, letting go, all the different identities that have been placed on us. Identities as a daughter, identities as a Jamaican person, identity as a class D celebrity, identity as like whatever it is, maybe class F, identity as a big sister, as a designer, there's all these, as a nomad. There's all these things that these people do. And here's the thing I recognize, I really do not like labeling myself, but almost to my detriment, because for me, people put a label and there's always these expectations that come with it. For example, for the longest while, I wouldn't say it's till this year. I've not even this year, just yesterday I was thinking, I could probably fall under the label of yogi, because people have that label for people who do yoga. I've been practicing yoga for at least 20 years. No, not necessarily seriously. I would say 10 years, maybe like with more intention. But I'm not doing it because I want to be a yogi. It's just a part of my authentic expression and exploration of life. And so I would hear the term yogi, and I know what comes with all those terms. You think a super hippie looking person who just runs around the world and lives in Tulum. No, I guess I
I mean,
kind of
that
look like
really
that.
describes you.
Shit. I fit the description. Damn.
Yes, you do.
Well, it would be authentic of me to take the title yogi.
Yeah, it will be. Also, I think this is interesting, right?
You're so
I
right.
feel like when you're trying to fit a label is different than when the label automatically describes you. So, for example, with the yogi thing, you didn't try to be a yogi.
I did not try
You
to be a yogi.
are a
I did
yogi,
not try.
right? And
Yeah.
then when you're trying to describe yourself, you can look at all these terms and be like, okay, this term kind of fits me, that one doesn't fit me, and this one really fits me. That I think is how it happens when it's authentic, right? It and it's, for me, I think about it in regards to being a coach, right? I It was a whole thing for me to decide to call myself a coach. And I really went through the process of saying, okay, what does it mean to be a coach? Am I good enough to be a coach? Given I did not get any sort of licensing or anything like that, I did learn a lot throughout the process, but nothing that is very academic or anything like that. But then when I look at it, I've been coaching since my teenage years, maybe even before that. And the coaching professionally in the way that I've been doing it for the past 6 years, it also feels different even in that space, because now I've embodied it, that it's just who I am. And I don't feel like I need to prove that I'm a coach. I don't think I need to tell you any. I just am. And if you know what a coach is, because I think it's still a term that's a bit new and not everybody knows what it is. But if you know what a coach is and you see me just talking to somebody, there's going to be aspects of coaching that comes through. Given I'm very conscious that I don't coach everywhere I go, one, because it's my gift and I should get paid for it, and two, because people don't like that.
Yeah, tell me about it. Especially not in intimate relationships.
Yes. So I am aware of that, but if you really observe me, you'll notice that I do it naturally. It's not something that I try to do.
Yeah. I want to know what your definition is of authenticity and if you would shift or add onto anything that I shared.
For me, it's being yourself. Something that I've noticed about me is I am the same person everywhere I go. And I used to believe that people that are not that, people that, you know, code switch or are different in different areas of their lives, are inauthentic. And then I learned in human design, I don't know which one it is, but one of the things in human design, if it's not defined, that means that you're the same person everywhere, which is me. But for somebody else, it's actually authentic to switch from environment to environment like a chameleon.
That's me.
That's their strength.
That's me.
Yeah, I can see that, right? And so there is no right or wrong with that. Being authentic is really owning who you are unapologetically. Now, we have been conditioned to not own parts of ourselves, that certain things need to be a certain way. And so, the adventure and authenticity that you're talking about, I feel like is about letting go of that stuff in order to find yourself. If I bring that into my world of coaching, which is freedom alchemy, where it's all about experiencing more freedom by challenging the norms, then it is to challenge the norms of what society told you who you are, how society tells you to behave and act and be, challenging those in order to be more of yourself, to experience more of who you are, that freedom within, liberating yourself from that shit. Like, let it go.
What would you say are, I mean, obviously you challenge the norms in general, but I'm curious, is there one specific norm that you believe you challenge in your life that has had the greatest impact, either as a price or a prize?
I would say productivity.
Okay, say more.
Mm-hmm. So
What's the norm
I've
and how did you
always,
challenge it?
yes. So, first of all, productivity is oftentimes seen as getting shit done, right? And you get it done by consistently showing up and doing the work. More so, if you look at corporate work or even beyond corporate, is usually there's a time frame, usually 8 hours a day of work. In some fields, it's more than that. But that once you do that, you were productive. And so when I came into entrepreneurship and I started working for myself, I was like, that's what I need to do. And it's kind of funny because that's also the reason why I wanted to work for myself so I don't have to do that. But in the beginning, it was like, oh my God, there's so much to do, so much to set up, so much to go through. And I really just like tried my best to have an 8 hour workday. Now I was working for myself, so it was always longer than 8 hours anyway. Then I was like, this is not working. And I was very unhappy. And for me, it was working on the outside. Let's be clear, right? The money was flowing, the clients were coming, things were working out. So in the traditional business sense, it was working. But for me, I needed a business that feels liberating to me, because otherwise, to me, why do this stuff? I might as well just get a job that's guaranteed pay, right? Or at least mostly.
Mm-hmm.
um so then I started to explore with, what does it mean to work less? What does it mean to work only when I want to? What does it mean to work, um, to just follow my feelings and my emotions? What does it mean to just be and not focus on doing? And that's been a hefty price in a lot of ways, because that journey, nobody could tell me how it goes. At least I didn't find anybody. And I explored with so many things. I explored with only working 2 hours a day. I explored with working more hours. I explored with only working when I wanted to and not give a shit what the outcome is. I've explored, sleeping more, waking up early. There was a time I was working from 5 to 7 in the morning. Like, all the stuff. I tried it all that I could think of, at least. And now I found my balance. And I can tell you simply what it is. It is to trust your rhythm, trust yourself in the process, right? Listen to your body, listen to your feelings. There is a period of calibration, because you don't know if it's your feeling or not in the beginning. You don't know if this is going to work out. Like, there's so much fear and so much question in that. But the more you surrender and you trust the process, rest when you need to, drink when you want to, shower when you want to, exercise when you want to, the more it will just calibrate itself. We don't need to force ourselves. You gotta work out every day. You gotta eat healthy every day. It will calibrate itself, but you gotta trust the process. You can't be in limbo land where it's like, I trust it sometimes, I don't. Like, that was my experience and it took forever. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say just trust the process and allow your whole existence to calibrate to your authenticity.
I relate to that. I'm still working on that because I left working in a very rigid, structured way in 2020, and I started just going with the flow 100%. And most of my time in Mexico was that. But in the last year since I moved to Tulum, I felt myself coming out of what I would call the hermit mode. Like, I'd been more or less in, for me, it was so new to just go with the flow. And to be honest, even with just going with the flow, I was making money. I was coaching in public speaking.
Me too. It's just
Yeah. And it was actually
interesting, right?
working, but there's just something to it that's like, but I should be doing it this way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so since I moved to Tulum, especially because I was now exposed to a lot more people and a lot more rhythms and a lot of digital nomads who are still sort of in this work, work, work mentality, even though, they're freer in some regard. There is still something in me that tries to do it that way. But what I've been finding is I need a balance. So I need a structure, meaning I need a plan to get me back in flow if I ever feel out of flow. And what that means is I know I feel out of flow when I'm feeling frustrated, when I'm just feeling lackadaisical and not motivated to do anything, right? Then that's when I know I'm out of flow. But once I'm in flow, so my structure is more around the things that get me into a flow state. And then from the flow state, I send intentions to the great wide net of life and all knowing. Hey, I have an intention of this. Hey, I have an intention of that. And usually I will find the guidance that makes it happen. I know this can sound like airy fairy, but it really is very practical. So my discipline is I wake up, there must be some quiet time, and that quiet time is just to tune my mind to what I'm focusing on. So one of the first things I do before I open my eyes, I really start to think about everything I'm grateful for, before I even open my eyes. And I do that because that tunes my mind to be looking for goodness as opposed to be looking for problems and stress. And from that place, then yes, I will be making petitions to God, because in my experience of spirituality, I don't have a problem talking to or about God. I see God as the all that is, that includes me, that works in seemingly magical ways because we can't always fully explain it exactly how it works. But I'll start setting an intention, and be asking for things, asking for protection, asking for my energy to be in alignment, asking for guidance into, what should I be doing with my business, clarity, whatever it is that has come up that I'm curious about or that I need. I will be asking for that from a place of flow. And I will find that just with following the impulses that come up, things happen. And there are times when I'll have super productive moments. And then there are times when, yes, it will just feel like I just need to be resting. I will say this though, Shada, I still struggle sometimes with the guilt of resting during work hours. It's, like there's something in me that feels like there's this guilt of resting during work hours. But really, practically, what usually happens is, as I am resting, I'm also formulating ideas. So my rest is not just like nothing. I'm formulating, what do I want to do, what's most important, or even as I'm just moving through activities, because I can't necessarily sit on one activity too long. So I usually tend to be doing a lot of different things at a time. But as I do that, the energy will usually now come together and swell to the point of really executing one thing that needs to be done, and just getting into, like, for example, last night, I would say I'd been procrastinating on editing a podcast episode that I needed to. But really and truly, I was not. I was connecting with friends, which was really important. I was processing a move because I've recently moved houses. And so I was settling. I was taking care of my food and making sure I was eating well, all this stuff. So I was doing the stuff that I needed to do to be as settled as possible to be able to do that work. And by the time that I decided to sit down and do the work, which is close to my deadline, but still, I had garnered enough energy to be able to do something decent. It probably wasn't the top notch, but it was something decent. And it was better than it would have been if I had forced it 2 days ago, because 2 days ago, I wasn't balanced enough to really sit and do that.
Yeah. That Do you know how productive I've been watching TV? It's like sometimes I don't watch TV as much anymore, which happened naturally. I watch so much TV that I'm just like, meh. Like, I and it's been fascinating to me because I'm like, ugh, I don't really like it anymore. Now I'll read a little bit more, but I'm still not a huge fan of reading. I'm still learning to get there. Um, but I used to just watch a show, just watch, binge. And when I want to do that, right? And at some point, I just feel like I'm done. And I just start doing what I need to do.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me how that's started to happen. Another thing that started to happen that I'm amazed by is how much I work. Like I've always worked out of, I gotta do the work, I gotta do it, right? Nowadays, it's just, it comes naturally. I just wanna work. Like if I think of all the fun things that I could do, what's considered quote unquote work is the most fun thing for me. But
Exactly.
also, that's two parts. That's one, I've calibrated myself and I've healed and I've accepted myself and I've let go of past stuff. So much stuff has gone into that. But on the other hand, I also only do what I absolutely love.
So
So I
I feel
always
like,
give the example, right? Like this right here, I was tired. I was rushing this morning all morning. But this, even though it's another thing for me to do, I want to be here and I enjoy being here. So it's fun.
Yeah. It's funny because I was just talking about this to a friend of mine. Um, my business is shifting. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't know exactly how it's shifting yet, but it's shifting towards joy. And I'm seeing where there's some things I'm going to be releasing and some things that I'll start emphasizing based on what brings me the most joy. And I think that's one of the prizes of authenticity that you just highlighted. The fact that work isn't work that much, or like you get joy. There's more joy in life because what you're doing are things that you want to do. That's a huge prize. That's a huge, huge prize. Like the things that you're doing are things you want to do. And so for me, even my editing my podcast, where I said I'd been procrastinating when really it wasn't that I was procrastinating because I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to be in a good space to do it. It's something I'm enjoying. Like I really enjoy building this brand around travel and personal transformation because that is my literal life. And so I've been feeling into, putting on a retreat again very soon. And as I have been spending my weekend the way I would normally spend my weekend, I went hiking 2 days this weekend. I went dancing, had the best time. I'm in these experiences and I'm formulating business ideas because my business is directly related to my authentic self. Like these experiences, partying and hiking, is what my business is about. My travel, like the travel site, my retreats and that kind of stuff. And so it's like, wow, like life is, I'm creating my life as I live it. That's basically what I'm creating my life as I live it. And for me, I love that my work is not separate from my life and that I don't feel like I'm separating myself. That's a huge prize. I don't feel like I'm separating myself. And now, if I ever do work that I don't want to do or don't love doing, for me, the authentic thing is not to say, okay, I will never do that work if it's helpful, if it's something I need, it can bring stability. But it's also to try to find a way to at least create a perspective that highlights what the authentic expression of me is. So, for example, let's say I'm a singer and I need to bartend, right? And I don't necessarily enjoy bartending. For me, what helps me with still feeling authentic is to know and to make sure that I am managing my money and my time and my attention well, that this bartending is feeding my singing thing. And so it's not necessarily going away from my authentic self because it is specifically feeding this thing by giving me the money, the food, the exposure that I need to be able to do this thing. So sometimes we may not always be able to make the decisions that seem quote unquote most authentic. I think we also have to be wise about how we can take care of and nurture ourselves. But if we are still focusing on at the end of the day, what am I doing? Who am I? And what am I wanting to create? And doing things in that vein, like coloring the reason we do things from that point of view. And I think it supports us with even feeling more stabilized in our authenticity and to even bring joy to not enjoyable experiences, potentially unenjoyable experiences.
I often say that freedom should not come as a sacrifice of freedom, right? Like you should not sacrifice where you feel free in order to feel more free. Like that doesn't make sense because at the end you're going to have freedom in one area. You're just like switching freedom from one area to another. Like that doesn't make sense. But recently I saw somebody post on Facebook that sacrifice is to make sacred. And so, coming
Ooh.
back to what you said, if you need to bartend in order to sing more, which is what you enjoy, then the bartending is to make sacred, right? To create sacred space for what you do. But then also, I would say, if bartending is the most horrifying thing you can think of in order to make money and sing, maybe it might not be the best thing for you to
Right.
do. Maybe it should be something completely different. Maybe also like a easy entry low end job that, you know, you can make some money with. But bartending might not be the thing because it might, in some instances, it might kill your soul,
Right.
which then you try to get back through singing. And it's not you're not moving forward. You're just staying where you are. You might as well just shut up singing and sit in a corner.
I because you're just kind of spinning in a circle. That's if the thing you're using as a sacrifice is horrifying. You know, I love what you said about sacrifice being making sacred. Wow, that puts so much more perspective, and actually even to me now, because there have been things I've been struggling with in my business. There are parts that I don't enjoy as much and parts that I prefer. And I've really been struggling with, should I just completely forget about the parts that I don't enjoy and focus on the parts that I like? But the parts that I don't enjoy are the ways that I think I can make most money now. So for example, right now, I I have been making a living as a public speaking coach, and I enjoy it. I do enjoy it. What I enjoy more is travel experiences and booking retreats and taking people all around the world and traveling the world. That's what I enjoy more. That has a little bit more of a higher level of entry to organize, in order to, it just takes a little bit more organization than public speaking coaching. And I've been grappling with this recently. Should I take all of my energy off of public speaking coaching to just to focus on this side of stuff? What should I do? What should I do? I don't know. But I'm gonna consider more of what you said with this sacrifice thing and the sacredness of it, because the aspects that I think are not my favorite, if I take it from a position of sacredness, I can actually really resonate with that. And even more so, I really enjoy coaching because of what I see it do for the people I serve. That feels really sacred. That feels like, to be honest, that is the thing that motivates me the most about it. When I look at my clients and I can see their confidence growing, I can see that their communication skills are supporting them in interpersonal relationships, is helping them feel more confident on the job. Like, I'm literally changing these people and changing their lives and impacting through them the people around them. That's sacred. I enjoy that a lot about being a coach.
Yeah. And then on top of that, there's always a way for you to make things happen, right? Like talking about the word sacrifice and the higher entry of like organizing a retreat. This is me showing up in like my business coaching side. Um, there's always a way where you could say you can get people to help you and sacrifice a percentage. Like even if you do not have the money to pay them up front, you could say you can gather a team of people based on their expertise and say, we're going to do this together. We all might not have all the money in the world, but we have these expertise. We're going to put it together and everybody gets a percentage, right? That's how a lot of people think. Not a lot of people, people that are like high in business, that's how they think, right? I think Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, he owns a small percentage. Is it him? I don't know. Like these big companies that have CEOs that are like, this is the CEO of the company. Yes, they have their shares and it does bring a huge amount of money. But if you
It's
have
shares.
1% of a billion, is way better than if you have 100% of $100. You know? So it's about getting creative and finding your way of making it happen with the resources that you have available to you. And if we're speaking about people from the Caribbean in particular, like based on how fucked up the world is and colonization and all that shit that happened, we don't have as much resources. It's a fact. And that's, at least that's what we tell ourselves, right?
Hmm.
we don't have a lot of resources if we compare ourselves to other countries that have other resources that they've done something with it. But we do have our own resources. So then it's like, okay, what do I have in my hands? What are the things that I do have? What are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that my country has that does work that I can use in order to
Yeah.
create something with it?
Well,
And
as you
not
say,
hide from, oh, I don't have anything. Nah, that's not the mindset that's going to get you places.
so then that sounds like another prize of authenticity, which is knowing yourself better, have been able to take better stock of who you are, which ultimately leads to more confidence, which also leads to more opportunity. Because if you can take stock of, by being focused on how can I be most authentic, take stock of, okay, this is the kind of person I am, these are the skills, these are the strengths I have. You have those 10 points of what you know makes you up. By having that level of clarity, you're more able to seize opportunities that would be in alignment with you. And that brings me to another prize, which I want to talk. Well, I'm going to talk about the price and the prize on this side, specifically relationships. So I want to go to the price and prize of me being authentic as it relates to my relationships. A big part of my authenticity is, well, being authentic is more than just one part of your life. So I don't want to just focus on one part of my life. But I would say, generally speaking, I am a free spirit, meaning I question, I'm curious, I want to find out what is the most enjoyable and free way that I can exist. And that has taken me outside of religion, which I grew up in. That's taken me outside of being a straight heterosexual woman, which I grew up as. It's taken me outside of working as an architect, which is what I studied. It's taken me beyond a lot of things that would have defined me and which other people would have preferred had defined me. Other people, specifically family members. So when I decided to, in my authenticity, start exploring the world, start exploring my spirituality, come out as a pansexual and polyamorous woman, start questioning where I'm going to put my work efforts, it was something that cost me relationships, because relationships that were aligned with those identities were no longer aligned. And I mean, that's a really nice, clean way of saying it, but it was a lot more painful than that, right? It
People shit on you.
was a lot more painful than that. People can be scared. People can be scared of what they don't understand, and scared people are dangerous people, because scared people need to protect themselves. And yeah, if I see that someone's afraid of me, I know that person can't be my friend. Like, someone who's afraid of you can't be a friend, because they're either running from you or attacking you, right? Like, it's like, so where's the space? So in showing up in my authenticity, I had people running from me and people attacking me. That's a price. I lost my relationship with my mother. My mother disowned me. I lost my relationship with my father. He disowned me. My siblings also have drifted away. Those are the most painful and the most costly. Definitely the costliest part of showing up in my authenticity. 100%. Big cost, huge cost. To lose a mother is a huge cost. To lose a mother to rejection from that mother, I think feels, I cannot say, but I think feels worse than death. because it's, at least with death there was some level of expectation that this is how things happen. We all know we're going to die at some point, and you process it, you grieve it, of course, and I will grieve her when she's dead as well. But to have that separation while she's living, that's something that is a heartbreak I cannot describe in words. So absolutely costly. On the other side, the prize of showing up in my authenticity is the people who are aligned with me. So, like I said, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things about yourself. That means when you see it out in the world, you're more able to say, hey, I'm aligned with that. And so, while I've lost these relationships that felt really valuable, but were, as we can see, conditional and could only go so deep, the ones that I lost. I have gained relationships where one, I trust the people around me more because I've shown them everything. And if you see it and you still decide to come, all right, well, you already know, so it's your business if you don't like it, right? Like that's one, I can trust who comes more. And two, who comes is it's richer relationships. Like I have richer relationships than I've ever had right now in my life. The friends I have, we're deep, we're real, we're raw, we love each other, we're committed. Like they align with me, like so I found that that's one prize. Another prize is actually as a result of being rejected by my family and how I chose to respond. I have gained a sense of inner strength and security with myself and my understanding of God. That's unbeatable. No, I'm not asking the devil to come and tempt me. Please don't, you don't have to try. Like I'm not trying to bring temptation on myself. But I do trust myself unequivocally, like absolutely 100%. And that level of trust and security in myself has only come from the way I survived what felt unsurvivable. And so because I was authentic, I lost the most precious thing to me at the time. I survived it. So I started understanding my strength and who the fuck I am. I was like, oh, nobody can. No, no. Like I know who I am. Of course, people still, sometimes I'm still learning. People still get in there, but I still, more or less, I have a great security in how I will deal with hardship. That's a big prize because I can go out more bravely in the world because I know that I can handle hardship. Not again, not calling it on myself.
Do you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you feel like it gets easier along the way to be authentic?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel so too. I feel like it's a momentum that you build, right? Because as you're talking, I'm like, there's so many ways I've moved away from, moved towards my authenticity and away from what people expected or told me I should do. And when I think about it, it's like a muscle. It becomes easier and easier and easier, right? I'm editing my About Me page on my website right now. And there's like some key things that I say on there that I just read a few minutes ago. Um, and I say, like after high school, I graduated. They say it's like the top 5% of the country that graduates from the level of high school that I do. Given that I didn't graduate valedictorian like the best, but I did graduate with really high numbers because I didn't study for the final exam. I just went in and I knew what was I knew what I had to do. Had I studied, I would have been the best. But anyway,
You're challenging the norms from that thing. I've never been
yes,
competitive with schoolwork. It just didn't, it wasn't, I got
me
good grades as well,
neither.
but I was like, what's all this hoopla about? Just,
Me neither. But
yeah.
anyway, like graduating at that level, which is the highest in my family in so many ways. I do have an uncle that I've graduated that, but and so everybody's like, okay, now she's going to college, specifically college and university in the Netherlands, because that's such a bougie. It's not bougie anymore. Everybody does it, but it's like such a cool thing, like such the next step. I didn't feel it. I got the opportunity, luckily, to do an exchange program in the Netherlands. So I went to school in the Netherlands for a day or two. I did not like it. I did not like the Netherlands the first time I stepped foot in that country. Something within my whole system just felt horrible. And I don't know how I knew it because I was what, 16? Is it 17? 16, 17 when I went, right? I don't know how I knew. I was like, I don't like this place. And my mind tried to tell me all these things, and people too, of like, Maybe it's because you stayed with strangers. Maybe it's because the weather. First of all, the weather was perfect when I was there. It was like 31 degrees Celsius, like perfect weather. I just did not like it. And so I decided to become a missionary, which at the time felt like what I wanted to do. I wanted to travel, I wanted to meet people, and I wanted to help people. Like, my heart is really like, I wanted to genuinely help people and serve people. And that's the only way I knew how at that time,
Hmm.
right? And I never went to university. And I don't regret that for a minute. Like, y'all know that debt y'all carrying? I ain't got it. I got none. None of it.
And you've just been, I mean, but you are well educated because you just educate yourself.
Yes, yes. So I'm very proud of that, right?
Yeah.
But then, you know, even the basis of the missionary work that I did, which was to know God and make him known from a Christian perspective, I don't agree with that anymore either. Right? So I challenged that norm, which, you know, just like you, it cost me so many friends and people. It didn't cost me my family, but it definitely is still costing me a deeper relationship and acceptance with my family. Um so it keeps going, you know. I was raped, so I had PTSD, and the way that my psychologist was telling me to go about it was to um find a way to go back to work and find a place for me to live by myself, when in reality I was going literally crazy. Like, it's hard for people to understand me not being mentally okay. I
Hmm.
really was not mentally okay.
Yeah.
And I fired my psychologist and just found my own way, did everything by myself, right? Which I don't recommend for everyone, but it was what worked for me. And so, was it easy? No, it was really hard. I lived off my savings because that's what I felt like I had to do for 2 years. I did not find a job. I had no work. I had nothing. I just sat and watched TV shows for 2 years. And that's been the experience. Was it a hard price to pay? Yeah. Because not only do I know don't have debt, but it also wiped out my savings. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I'm a better person for it. Like, I'm so proud of myself. This morning I woke up at 5 and I just didn't want to go back to sleep because I was just so proud of myself, just basking in how happy I was. So I started working.
And isn't that the thing? I wanted to say that earlier. The when you're talking about, if you just feel like watching something, you will, and then eventually you'll get to work. I found, actually saw a quote that spoke about it the other day. Joy is a greater motivator for me than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I focus on being in joy, what comes from that naturally usually evolves. And so sometimes again, we have the idea of what we should do, and no, it's 9 o'clock, so we should get to work.
Mm-hmm.
Just we can leave it there as an intention. We can leave it there as an intention, but focus on what will bring me the most joy in this moment right now, knowing I'm going
Mm-hmm.
towards that. And then the joy propels me to do more. That's what I
Yeah.
found for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, all in all, I would say, don't be afraid of the prize. Somebody specifically comes to mind right now that I don't know very well, but is a friend of a friend who's in this world of racial awareness and becoming aware of the impact of the racial disparity on himself. It's a black presenting man. And my friend, who's his friend, talks about how he's struggling with accepting, like fully embodying that based on the consequences that might come. And actually, another person comes to mind too. Like, when it's scary speaking up against systems and society and speaking up against white oppression and the lies we've learned in history. It's scary. I know, I've been through it. But also, it wasn't that scary for me because I started speaking up last year, which is after, the missionary and the um, leaving Christianity and PTSD and all that stuff. Like, I've been on this cycle of challenging the norms, being my authentic self, following my heart, my soul expression, all that stuff. So, racial awareness and speaking up was easy. It wasn't that hard. So, but if you're just starting out, don't shy away from the price. It's an adventure. And just like any adventure, it's scary. Like if you're bungee jumping or going on a hike in a peak or in a way that's a little bit scary, when you just go, you have something to tell afterwards and you're proud of yourself. And it's amazing, right? Or traveling solo or running a marathon, whatever it is, an adventure. Once you do it, the prize at the end is fucking amazing. Like, go for it. Dare yourself to take on that adventure.
Yes, I feel that. And I'm definitely that person who's just jumped. I made a pretty last minute decision to move to Mexico when I did
Mm-hmm.
and just start living life as a digital nomad. And it taught me a lot. And I don't regret it. But I still am going to put a kind of caveat on that, in that
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people should be afraid of the price, but I do think that it's okay to consider it. And not necessarily from a
Yes.
place of fear, but even just from a place of putting the systems in place for you to be okay as you become your most authentic self. So, for example, with me and
Yes.
my family, at the point in which I wanted to come out, it felt extremely important to do that. However, I was financially dependent on my family at the time. I was emotionally dependent on them in an important way as well, and just logistically, because I lived in one of their properties. So the choice to come out and that price, that cost of losing everything all at once, it really was a big shock. I mean, I lost
Mm-hmm.
income because my family has a business and I used to work for the business. So I lost income, I lost home, I lost emotional support all in one go, one fell swoop. So that was really hard. And
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of times in the processing of that where I would ask, should I have come out? And that's just, I'm just being very real. That's just a question that comes up because you're struggling, and that struggle is even till now. I mean, I'm doing better and better every day, but there's still the struggle that comes up with just that, not just the grief, because the grief is one thing, but the actual practical loss of support is another. So my encouragement is, yes, I do believe that it was worth it. I've told people this all the time. It is the greatest heartache of my life. And at the same time, on the other end, I think the joy is equal. So I now have a capacity for equal pain and equal joy. And I'm hoping the joy eventually will outweigh a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely worth it. I don't regret coming out and being my authentic self, because I've gained so much. I've traveled to new places. I've had deeper relationships. I've been able to experience things that I never would have experienced if I was kind of afraid of being separated from my family. I I mean, I've done a lot. So much, so much, so much fun, so much fun, so much depth, so much meaning. But I also think there's value to being able to look at the price and to save, in some sense, save up for it. Like how you might save up for a laptop, like sort of saving up your the way you're expressing yourself, and taking care of your needs, getting better
Mm-hmm.
friends, putting systems in place of your own self-love system, going to therapy, like saving up to prepare for the potential price of being your authentic self, especially if it's something like coming out as queer in a homophobic country, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
it could be anything though, but especially if it's something that can have really big repercussions. And I also want to say that people's authenticity can show up in different ways. And I used to
Mhm.
be the person who said, if you're not living out loud and proud, you're just a coward. I think it's fine if you have to separate the way you express yourself based on where you are and who you're with. My biggest encouragement is just that you don't get lost in the costumes that you have to put on. So if you have to put on masks in order to feel safe in certain environments, do what you feel you need to do. But at the core of it, don't forget who you are and make sure that there's more than enough space, community, and awareness of who you really to support who you really are, regardless.
I second that, and I'm so glad you brought it up. I'm so glad you brought it up because I do feel like there's this thing that goes on, that this ideology of just go, just jump, just and sometimes this just go, you hurt yourself more than was necessary. So if I think of this as an analogy of like cliff jumping, right? I remember I went cliff jumping in a grill at Rick's Cafe. And there's like this lower one, so you just go down and you could basically just go down the steps into the sea, right? But there's a wall there that you can jump, and the wall is a little bit high. It's not too high. I never know how to measure and
I
tell
think
you
that
more or less.
lower mall I would say is probably about 10 feet above the water, maybe.
Okay, 10 feet. And also don't think in feet. Um,
Oh, right. That's about 3 meters.
yeah,
Maybe about three
something along.
meters, like about the height of your ceiling, that lower
Yes,
one.
yes.
Yeah.
So I jumped off that, and then I had to go higher. Well, I
And that
met
one
this
is more
guy
like 10
on the
meters.
ledge, and I just sat there and talked to the guy instead of actually jumping. Everybody was like passing us. But at the end, the guy jumped, and I was like, I don't want to jump.
Yeah.
And now, had I jumped and forced myself to, it might have been fine. It might have been like, woohoo, best day of my life. But I didn't need that. And I
Yeah.
could have, because of my fear or uncomfortability, ended ended up weirdly, and then had to go to the hospital or whatever, which would have been horrible, right? And completely unnecessary. So, was it that one wasn't necessary for me. It wasn't a cliff that I had to jump off of.
Hmm.
And I've jumped off things not as high as that, but definitely higher than the lower one, the 3 meter one, here in Curacao. And again, it was fine. It's what I wanted to do. And I was ready and prepared for anything that might come. But it's not always the case. And so if you're not, don't take on something that you don't really want to take on. Don't just go find adventures just because we're talking about it just now. If your soul wants it, if you really want it, you'll know. If not, it's okay to be like, great information someday will come in handy.
And even if your soul wants it, you can take your time. Like even
Yes.
it's reminding me of what I said at the beginning, where authenticity isn't always the biggest, loudest person in the room. It can be very authentic to say, I'm not ready to jump off of this 10-meter high cliff, 40 feet high cliff. I'm not ready. I don't feel safe. I don't feel secure. And that's something that I've had to learn, especially in relationships, romantic relating and friendships as well. You know, I understand that I'm a traumatized person relationally based on what happened with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that. And I'm actually very good at when someone triggers me, separating what they've triggered from what they actually have done.
Mm.
So I'm able to see that when I get triggered in a relationship, I'll take my space and I'll process what was triggered that is not related to the person. But here's what I wouldn't do. Sometimes the thing that the person triggers equally requires a similar response to whatever they triggered in me. Meaning, I had someone I would date, they would always show up late. It triggers something in me. I would say, oh, I'm just getting triggered because my father always picked me up late at school. I don't know, some ridiculous thing. And I'll process that. But the part of me that believes I should be able to just jump will say, well, just jump into this relationship. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about the fact that this thing is triggering you. Like, don't pay attention to that. Ignore your triggers. You're only being triggered because you've been traumatized. So just allow yourself to jump. And what I would be doing in that situation is I'd be ignoring actually real, valuable information that my emotions and intuition were giving me about whether this relationship was aligned with me or not.
Yeah.
And so if I take it back to the analogy of you jumping off of Rick's Cafe, there could have been something in you very well that said, this is not for you, Shadia. Authentically, this is not for you to jump off of this thing. And that's okay if that's what your authentic thing is. So I also realize that, again, authenticity is not black and white. It's not in every situation I will do this or I won't do this. It is being able to acknowledge, I think, what's present in a moment and respond. For me, it's very authentic to say I'm not dating or having sex right now. It's interesting that a lot of what I talk about is sexuality and relationships, but I am not dating or having sex right now because authentically, based on experiences that I've had recently and based on just the need and desire to focus on my business, I'm not available for that authentically. I'm not available for that. But I could be saying, oh, because I'm a polyamorous person, I should have at least two people who I'm seeing because that's what's going to make me authentic. And then you realize that you're doing the same thing with this label that somebody was doing to you, Cherise, when you were a Christian. You know, like, oh, because you're Christian, you should be doing this or should be doing that. I don't have to should be doing any shit. I just have to be right here, right now, responding to right here, right now. And that's my challenge with labels. I don't have a challenge with labels because I put them on and off like clothes, but I can see where sometimes people are so committed to their labels that if in the moment, authentically, they desire something or don't desire something, they won't allow themselves to follow that impulse because it doesn't match the label.
Sure.
So yeah,
Sure.
just because I'm polyamorous doesn't mean I have to be with somebody all the time. Just because I'm a sexually liberated woman doesn't mean I have to be fucking every day. It's like it's what I need in each moment and what is authentic to me in each moment.
And the same goes for me. Like, just because I'm in a relationship doesn't mean I need to be fucking every day either. And sometimes that's what it means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Um, there's no, because sometimes you hear that about relationships where people are like, how often are you guys having sex?
It's
Oh,
ridiculous.
no, it needs to be more.
Oh my
Or
God.
we're
It's so
married, we don't have
ridiculous.
sex now. Like,
Oh, the relationship is like, no, it's ridiculous because you know what I've even realized about sex is honestly, no, I couldn't have a relationship that required that measured how healthy it is based on a sex level because that's such a for me sex is an alignment thing. And also and so people will take it to me like okay if you're not having sex it means you're out of alignment. Maybe, maybe not.
no.
But it could also just mean that your energy is in something else in that moment. And I don't see why that's bad. Like, this is the thing I love about having a queer view of relationships and having a more open view of relationships. I call myself polyamorous, is because I'm not putting expectations on what a relationship should be. I'm allowing the relationship to be what it is. So there's some relationships that are super emotionally intense, very supportive, and for whatever reason, people can be deciding not to have sex. The last relationship I was in, we weren't having sex and it wasn't from a place of either shame or something is wrong. It was we want to get to know each other before more and establish what's happening in this relationship before we do that. And actually by the time the relationship ended, I was happy we didn't have sex because for me that would have created a deeper bond for something that just wasn't quite as aligned as it needed to be. Maybe this isn't the best example for what we're talking about, but the point is because then the sex just looks like it really was a point. But the point is the relationship was still valuable for what it was. It
Yeah.
was, you know, and it's if I were basing it around sex, I would have been pushing and not here's the thing. I think the overemphasis on sex and sexual liberation, this is now gonna sound very contrary because I do believe in sexual liberty. But I also think that there's been an overemphasis in our society and the media that's like, you meet somebody, one, two, wham, bam, fuck. No, that can happen sometimes. It's happened to me and I've had fun. I'm not saying that it's
Mm-hmm.
a no, but it doesn't have to be that way. And like people will sometimes not have that sexual spark per se, but push for it because you kind of like the person or you want something with them. And so you're pushing, and you could be pushing against your own self. And as people with wombs, I actually have realized that a lot of us have created sexual trauma for ourselves in our wombs because we have allowed things to enter us, fingers or penises, before we were actually open. Meaning, literally, there is a process of the body naturally fully opening up to receive
Yes.
an external object, and that's a process. And sure, you can jam something up in there. And I'm sorry if that language is triggering. I apologize. Um, sure, you can force things, but when you force things before the time, it can actually be potentially damaging and wouldn't even allow, like, physically damaging, emotionally, that sort of stuff. And so I think there's a disservice that we do ourselves when we put sex as the thing that measures whether a relationship is good or bad or appropriate without the other aspects that could be relevant in the situation. Now, if it's just an open, playful sexual relationship and it's everybody's happy, sure. I'm not being a prude here. I'm just saying do things that are truly in alignment, not just based on this external expectation. And it's tricky because the expectation could go one way or the other. The expectation could either be coming from your religious background that says no sex, or coming from this other extreme that says fuck everything that move as soon as you see it. And it's like either way just is a little extreme. Let's just, let's find a little happy medium. You know what I'm saying? Well, what works for you? What works for you? I mean, if it works for you, go on. If it works for you, do it. But if it doesn't, explore other ways.
But then that also goes back to what you said. You need to know what you are and what you stand for, right? And connect it to yourself.
That's a process of knowing. It's not a
Yeah,
book.
it's a
It's not a rule
process. And
book.
then yeah, it's not a rule book, but it's a we're coming back full circle in this conversation because we said, authenticity is about knowing who you are and letting go of everything else that's not that unapologetically. But it's a process, right? And we talked about how it is a process and you get to decide how much you let go of at one time. But also once you know yourself and you are more in line with yourself, which again is a process. We're not asking you to be go from 0 to 100 real quick, but then you'll know when something is for you or not. Then you'll know, is it time to have sex or not? Is it time to work or not? Is it time to eat or not? Is it time to speak up or not? Is it time to jump or not? Right? Like all these examples that we gave, it comes back to this thing that you got to know yourself, know thyself, and be yourself unapologetically, authentically, whatever level that means for you right now.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good place to wrap up the conversation.
I agree.
And I would love to ask anyone listening on Spotify to just leave what you think authenticity means to you. Just a little one line, two line. I think there's also an option to do a voice recording, maybe that could also be interesting to hear what people have to say.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on Spotify, but it's on the podcasters. I don't know if I can do it.
We'll see.
Send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. You can do a voice message there.
Yeah, let's hear what you have to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. All right. That's it. We love to hear what you have to say. As always, we create together, that you're also part of this conversation. And we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.